Okay, let's talk about the area you can't see. The worst thing that could happen to Moscow is happening again, but it's not coming from the west. The whole territory of the Russian Empire is now up for grabs. In the shadow of the war, the ancient lands of the Muscovite Empire in the Far East are slowly and quietly changing hands. This is a backdoor operation by China and North Korea that will change everything and show that Russia's global power is falling apart. Thanks for being here. We can keep looking for the truth behind the lies because of your support. Let's go back to the border in the east now. The Kremlin is stuck at the front gate, but there are no guards at the back door. Ukraine's brave fight isn't just changing the lines of battle, it's changing the whole geopolitical map of the Russian Federation. The huge power vacuum that Moscow's decision to send all of its resources, men, tanks, and money, to the Ukrainian meat grinder has left, is being filled at an alarming rate by Asia's two biggest powers. This shows that Russia is at the height of its sovereignty, military, and economic crises. The price for its failed war in the West is now being paid with the loss of land and power in the East. The SCR, Ukraine's sharp intelligence network, was the first to tell the truth, no matter how shocking it sounds. But this isn't just something that Kyiv is saying anymore. The same scary story is now coming from many sources, including The Telegraph and Defense UA. China and North Korea are quietly moving deep into the Russian Far East. But how can this be? Is Putin really just giving away land? Ukrainian intelligence says the answer is a loud yes. They say that Moscow is really trading land for war support. The Kremlin is paying the highest price it can, its own sovereignty. It needs North Korean artillery shells and Chinese economic and technological life support. Give it some thought. In its all-consuming obsession with Ukraine, Russia has done the unthinkable. It has emptied its eastern military bases. The troops, tanks, and air defense systems that had kept China in check for decades have been moved and destroyed in the fields of Donetsk. This one desperate act has not only left the empire's back door unlocked, but also wide open. Intelligence reports now say that because of this carelessness, China's commercial, demographic, and strategic power is spreading like an oil slick. At the same time, North Korea has greatly improved its logistical and military mobility close to the border. Don't be fooled. Ukraine's resistance has forced Russia to fight on only one front, which has caused this deadly geopolitical bleeding on the other. But why would China, who is supposed to be Russia's no-limits partner, do this? Aren't they friends? This is where we need to draw a line between history and propaganda. Russian state TV talks about brotherhood, but Chinese history books tell a very different story. In China, the Russian Far East is called Outer Manchuria. It is a huge area of land with a lot of resources. The Chinese say that the Tsarist Russian Empire stole this land in the 19th century through what they call the Unequal treaties, which were the Treaty of Aigun, 1858, and the Convention of Peking, 1860. In China, cities that are now mostly Russian, like Vladivostok, are still called by their original names like Haishinwai. For decades, this was a quiet, historical complaint. But Putin's war in Ukraine changed everything. Recent articles in Western media, such as The Hill, have already asked the question out loud. Maybe it's time for China to take back some Russian land that was stolen. Beijing has never officially given up on these claims. They have just waited. Now they see a partner in Moscow that is weak, in need of money, and completely dependent on their diplomatic support at the UN. They are using this power to not take the land by force, at least not yet. They are doing it in a much smarter way. They are making it economically unimportant to Moscow and very important to Beijing. What are they doing? By silent takeover. According to The Telegraph, China is taking over Russia's backyard, while hundreds of thousands of young Russian men from the Far East are sent to die in Ukraine or leave the country to avoid being drafted. A lot of Chinese workers and settlers are reportedly crossing the border to fill that gap. This is not an invasion, it's osmosis. Check out the city of Heihe on the border. According to Think China, life there is a border waltz. People from the Russian city of Vladivostok, which is on the other side of the Amur River, come to Heihe not only to buy cheap things, but also to get basic services like dental care. There are Russian signs in Heihe. The people who work in the store speak Russian. The Chinese yuan is now almost the only thing that the economy of that Russian city depends on. This is what people call soft annexation. Russia is so desperate for money that it has let China take its natural resources, like timber, gas, and minerals, at rock-bottom prices. They are helping to pay for bridges, roads, and railways that connect the Far East to Beijing, not Moscow. It's basically a break from the Russian economy. People in Vladivostok already think that their economic future doesn't depend on what happens in the Kremlin, but on money coming in from other countries. And then there's the North Korean factor. China is the economic predator, and North Korea is the opportunistic jackal. Ukrainian intelligence also noticed that Pyongyang's logistical and military mobility was getting better near the border. It sounds bad, but it's much worse than that. For the past year, we've seen Kim Jong-un and Putin form a desperate alliance of people who don't fit in. It's a simple and ugly deal. North Korea sends Russia millions of artillery shells to keep its war in Ukraine going. The shells are of questionable quality, but there are a lot of them. In return, Russia gives North Korea food and fuel, as well as ballistic missile technology and satellite know-how. But now that Russia's regular troops are no longer stationed along its Far East border, this cooperation means something very different. Sources like the Kyiv Insider say that North Korea is now using the huge, empty areas of Siberia as its own logistical backyard. Reports say that tens of thousands of North Korean workers are being sent to the area to work on logging and construction projects. This gives Pyongyang a much-needed source of foreign currency, and Moscow a supply of slave labor it no longer has. But the bigger worry is military. What was the total cost of those millions of shells? According to Defense UA, Ukrainian intelligence sources say that the payment could include secret territorial concessions, or, at the very least, military access rights that have never been given before. Consider this. What is to stop North Korea, a rogue state that can't be trusted, from using this border that is now defenseless for its own purposes? What stops its spies from working freely? What keeps them from using Russian land as a stopover for illegal activities? Russia is no longer in charge. It has given up its security in the East for its obsession in the West. This dangerous geopolitical slide has finally set off alarms in Russia. Nationalist media and military bloggers, who used to only talk about victories in Ukraine, are now getting more and more worried about China's possible claims on the Far East. Moscow has been denying for years that the war in Ukraine could put the country's own territorial integrity at risk. Now, however, this idea has made its way into the country's political discourse. They are scared. They are coming to understand that Putin is losing the Russian Empire in the East while trying to bring back the Soviet Union in the West. The Kremlin is now in an impossible strategic bind that it created itself. Option 1. Keep fighting in Ukraine until it runs out of men and weapons, and in the meantime, watch China, its strategic partner, quietly take over its territory in the East. Option 2. Ukraine should admit defeat and pull its troops back to the East to protect its borders. This would be a humiliating military and political defeat for NATO and Kyiv. As you can see, both options would be a complete disaster. Ukraine's brave sacrifice has not only protected its own freedom, but it has also brought Russia to the brink of a two-front geopolitical collapse. This is what the war really costs. It's not just the tanks that are gone, it's the empire. Putin's obsession with Ukraine has left a huge power vacuum that China and North Korea are more than happy to fill. But wait, you might say. Hasn't the war made the relationship between Russia and China stronger? Isn't it true that Xi and Putin shake hands all the time? This is the point at which we need to tell the difference between propaganda and what really happened. The Asia Society Policy Institute says that the relationship between China and Russia is not one of equals. It is a very unfair relationship that is only good for one side. China is getting a lot of good things from a Russia that is weak and alone. First, they are getting energy for very little money. Moscow is currently Beijing's biggest oil supplier and is giving them big discounts. Second, by getting the West to focus on China's own plans for Taiwan, they are getting a junior partner that can compete with the US. On the other hand, Russia has become completely dependent. The Chinese yuan is important to its economy. Chinese parts are important to its technology sector. A Chinese veto at the UN is what gives it its diplomatic power. Russia is not getting help from China in the war. China is helping Russia not fall apart too quickly, but at the same time, it is carefully taking its money and power. Engelsberg Ideas analysts have pointed out that we are now in Russia's age of contraction. The empire is getting smaller. The war in Ukraine was its last desperate attempt to grow, and it failed so badly that it caused the opposite to happen, a faster contraction. This loss of Russian power is not only a win for Kyiv, it's a huge deal for all of Asia. Japan and South Korea are already on high alert because of threats from North Korea and aggression from China. Now they see Russia not as a counterweight, but as a huge, failed state that is making a dangerous power vacuum on their borders. This is speeding up their own remilitarization and making their ties with the US stronger. Putin's dream of a great Russian world has turned into a nightmare. He has opened the back door for his own allies to eat up the East while he tries to take over Ukraine. The irony is terrible. Putin said he was invading Ukraine to protect Russian speakers and keep Russia's historical borders safe. The Russian Far East, which is much larger and more strategically important than the Donbass, is now losing its de facto sovereignty because of the same war. The cost of this war isn't just the lives lost on the front lines. The empire itself is what costs the most. Moscow is now facing its worst nightmare, a lost war in the West and territory eaten up in the East. The chessboard of world politics is being turned upside down. The king, who was obsessed with a pawn in Ukraine, never saw the Chinese queen take over his whole eastern flank. What do you think? Is this the quiet breakdown of the Russian Federation? Or is it just a cynical deal where Putin gives up his power in the East to pay for his war in the West? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.